The Popo 50. Their job is to protect and serve. It says so right on the side of their cruisers. And these tech-forward vehicles come decked out with ballistics to protect the occupants from just about any situation imaginable. All while having some of the latest technology and features to enhance the driving experience during long days on duty. So, that got us thinking, how have police cars changed and adapted over time? How did they go from electric wagons just 100 years ago to hybrid cruisers with fully autonomous driving capabilities? Yes, this means that autonomous police vehicles could enforce traffic laws very soon. A scary thought that's coming way sooner than you think. So you're gonna wanna watch till the end. And if you're new here, my name is Brad Danger. This is Ideal Cars. Please subscribe and turn on that notification bell because we're dropping the heat with new content every other day. So buckle up, make sure your handcuffs are tight, and let's go. So, where did it start? Well, in 1899 in Akron, Ohio, where crimes were happening all around town. And instead of having to call officers placed around the city, they devised that their officers should be mobile. So, the city had the Collins Buddy Company make them a car for around $2,400, which doesn't seem like a lot of dinero, but it's about $65,000 in today's money. It was powered by not one, but 2 horsepower electric motors, giving it an impressive top speed of 16 miles per hour and a range of about 30 miles. So, criminals, well, they stood no chance. And only some that are as fast as Usain Bolt would be able to outrun this thing. It was a sight to see back in the 1800s because this was the first horseless police vehicle ever used in the US. And because they were going to capture a bunch of criminals, they added a cell for captured inmates with room for up to 12 people. This wagon with all that room was a huge improvement from what they had before. This allowed the squad of officers to be mobile, which made other cities notice this too. And this led to a chain of cities getting their very own patrol cars, such as New York just 20 years later with the fleet of radio motor patrol vehicles. Now, the fleet of vehicles that New York deployed made it so they could deploy officers to problem areas very quick. And with a police car and a radio, a single officer could cover an area that would have previously needed several officers. Because not only were response times a lot shorter, but also less officers were needed to cover the same area. And that saved jurisdictions a lot of money, especially during the Prohibition era. And that's when criminals decided that they needed to be faster than police, and they got souped up cars. You know, ones that would outrun the police cars. So, what did that mean for the cops? Well, they had to upgrade too, and their upgrade came from Ford with the introduction of the Flathead V8, one of my favorite V8s ever. And if you like V8s, well, hit the like button. I want to see how many of you love internal combustion V8 power. In 1932, Ford unveiled the Flathead V8 Model 8 as an affordable vehicle with surprising performance for the time. And this engine was so good that the police force used it for over 30 years. And what was so great is that it was cheap and it made more power than most cars on the road, which essentially made the Ford Flathead V8 a real possibility for police all across the country. Not only did the police like the Flathead V8s, but the criminals liked them as well. And they would take their Flatheads and soup them up, making them into lethal hot rods. Does Bonnie and Clyde ring a bell? I thought so. And they were one of many criminals that used this powerhouse to try to outrun the police. And it did work for a while, up until the 1940s or so, which is when the big three started to get down to business and make actual police packages. And as you probably know, pretty much every police car has been coming out of Detroit from the big three. You got Ford, you got Chevy, and you got Chrysler. And as the cops ordered more and more cruisers, the auto manufacturers started to notice a pattern. Most police cars left the factories with similar options. So that left them thinking, this is a good idea. What if we made a package with all those options on their specific cars? And not long after, the 3 manufacturers started offering police packages on their cars, which included big engines and more robust drivetrains. This allowed the cops to be legs ahead once again. That is, up until the criminals souped up their cars to outrun the cops once again. And then the police were fed up with it and they turned to none other than Plymouth, who, yes, made the Prowler, which should have had a V8, and instead it had an Intrepid V6. But back in the 60s, Plymouth did good. because Plymouth used Chrysler V8s, and those V8s put a ton of power out for the time. Enough power to keep up with the criminals. Yes, a 440 cubic inch V8 paired with Chrysler's trick torque flight transmissions. And this gave these Plymouth boats plenty of gusto to take down the criminals. But they also had torsion bar suspension to give them an advantage in the corners too. But back in the mid-1900s, speed was the name of the game. And Plymouth had the recipe nailed. Not only were they powerful, but they were proven reliable too, which was important for just about every officer on the force. I mean, I couldn't imagine almost getting to the bad guy and then all of a sudden your check engine light comes on. Would you stop or would you keep going? Let us know down below. If you were a cop, would you stop for a check engine light? I don't think I would. And these Plymouth powerhouses were great until the OPEC oil crisis, which absolutely changed everything. The police weren't enthralled with massive power from a honkin' V8. They wanted something smaller and more efficient. So police decided to move away from Chrysler and Plymouth cruisers and instead into smaller Chevy Caprice and Ford LTD models. And yes, the smaller cars were better on gas, but they also accelerated faster, they handled better, and even stopped quicker. So while Ford and Chevy decided to downsize, Chrysler continued to make big cars. The Ford was the less powerful of the two with its bigger 5.8 liter engine putting out only 142 horsepower. The Caprice came with a 5.7 liter V8 and it put down 170 horses. Even then, both cars underperformed the cars they were replacing. Why? Well, because the big boy Plymouths were putting down 375 horses, more than double either of these new cars. The next few decades after the oil crisis was resolved saw many police cars come out of the big three. Most came and most went. But there was one that stayed in the game for decades. Yeah, it wasn't terminated till 1996. It's called the Chevy Caprice. And for decades, the Chevy Caprice was the backbone for a lot of police. And unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. And the same fate that faced the Caprice when it was discontinued in 1996 is the same one I'm worried about with manual transmissions. So, if you want to help save the manuals, go snag our best-selling Ideal T. And because the Caprice was 86th, well, this opened the door to its main competitor, the Ford Crown Victoria. And the fight between the Crown Vic and the Caprice was close in the 90s, all the way up until Chevy canned the Caprice program in 96. Other manufacturers tried to make a rival of the Crown Vic, but it just dominated the police car market. Many of these tanks can be found still rolling around with 200, even 300,000 miles or more. Police officers liked the Crown Vic because it shared a lot with the Mustang GT of the time. So parts were plentiful and relatively cheap, and that meant that cops could use and abuse these cruisers, run them into the ground, and they just asked for more. So once they were retired cop cruisers, they became taxis and would serve many more active years of duty on the road. If that's not a testament of reliability, I don't know what would be.
Buckle up for safety, motherfucker.
When selling their cruisers instead of buying a different car, police would just go out and buy another Crown Vic. Made it real easy, they wouldn't have any buyer's remorse. And so the Crown Vic dominated police car sales throughout the company until they were discontinued. Now, the reign of the Ford Crown Victoria had to come to an end at some point. And Ford thought that 2011 should be its year. And with aging parts and old technologies, Ford decided to take a different approach with the newer car, a Taurus. But the thing is that the other manufacturers of the big three both wanted to get back into the police car segment too. Dodge, well, they rolled out a new Charger police vehicle, and Chevy revived the Caprice. So the cop cruiser race was on. In one corner, we had the defending champ Ford with their new Taurus, and competing against the current champion was both Dodge and Chevy. Each of the three had a very unique and different take on what a new era police car should be. Ford, well, they based their new cruiser on the existing Taurus platform, calling their new car the Ford Police Interceptor sedan. They took the aluminum block V6 directly out of the Mustang and stuffed it into the engine bay. This V6 was good for 305 horsepower, all while returning pretty decent gas mileage. But you could also get the twin-turbo EcoBoost 3.5 liter V6 pumping out a respectable 365 horsepower. Both engines were offered with all-wheel drive, which was better for any road conditions throughout the country. Unlike the outgoing Crown Victoria, the Police Interceptor sedan came with a load of safety features not even available on the Crown Vic. Just nice creature comforts like blind spot monitoring, a rear view camera, and specialty tuned traction control for emergency style driving. After hearing the Crown Vic was getting decommissioned, Chevy knew that they had to step up, and they came in strong. They not only brought back a name synonymous with police cars, but they're also based on the Australian-based Holden police car. The Caprice Police Patrol Vehicle, or PPV, received perfect scores by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Only being slightly knocked at its overcautious traction control. Sounds like Chevy would learn a thing or two from Ford, because the Chevy Caprice PPV came with an LS V8, or you could get a high-revving V6 for better economy. While the Caprice PPV wasn't as highly optioned as the Ford Police Interceptor sedan, it was still a solid competitor. So was the Dodge Charger Pursuit. Like the Caprice PPV, the Charger Pursuit was offered with a more efficient V6 and a more powerful V8 model. The Pursuit version came with bigger brakes, as well as a couple other features to make it less desirable for people trying to outrun the coppers. An all-wheel drive option became available on the V8 equipped models, and with it, they had a trick active transfer case, which allowed them to disconnect the front axle from the powertrain to aid in maneuverability. And plus, it just made the car a bit more playful. Drift, anyone? In 2012, just 1 year after the Crown Vic was discontinued, the Dodge Charger Pursuit became the #1 police sedan in the States. The all-wheel drive Ford Explorer Interceptor became the go-to police SUV. Both the Dodge Charger Pursuit and the Ford Explorer Interceptor dominate police forces around the country. The cops have chosen both of these vehicles for the combination of power economy and utility, and they rise above what their competitors put out. And let me tell you, even with the base 3.6 in the Dodge Charger Pursuit, chances are that you're not going to get away because it packs 300 ponies under the hood, which is pretty impressive. What's even more impressive is the optional 5.7-liter Hemi V8 with 395 foot-pounds of torque and 370 horsepower. Try to outrun that and you'll be left with a hefty ticket or even just behind bars. But you know, you'd expect that out of a muscle car. But what about an SUV? Well, the 3-liter EcoBoost engine puts out an impressive 400 horsepower and 415 foot-pounds of torque. No one gets away now. If you're worried about the gas mileage and the big turbo EcoBoost, then you might want to opt for the 3.3-liter hybrid version that comes standard with 23 miles per gallon city and even better on the highway. So it's fair to say that the present day cop cars are at the highest point that they've ever been. They are the most powerful, they're the most efficient, and definitely the most prepared squad cars that have ever been. And it's fair to say that the Popo will continue to up their game for decades to come. Just in the last couple of years, Ford patented an autonomous police vehicle that's gonna give you 0 ways to flirt your way out of a ticket. And get this, the craziest part is that it's not necessarily gonna even pull you over. Instead, it will just issue a traffic citation to your car wirelessly because, well, newer cars can communicate with one another. So we're all screwed. So what's your favorite era of police car? And have you ever owned a retired police car? I've heard they're like some of the best first cars ever, and they're just a lot of fun and everybody gets out of your way. Let us know down in the comments. Also, if you're new here, please subscribe and turn on that notification bell. Check out some of our other ideal vids. I'm Brad Danger, and keep living the ideal lifestyle.